Okay, look, I'll tell him you're not my boyfriend.
When we met, I said, travel with me in space. You said no. Then I said, time machine.
It wasn't some big plan. I just saw it happening, and I thought, I can stop it.
I did it again. I picked another stupid ape. I should have known. It's not about showing you the universe. It never is. It's about the universe doing something for you.
So it's okay when you go to other times and you save people's lives, but not when it's me saving my dad.
I know what I'm doing. You don't. 2 sets of us being there made that a vulnerable point.
But he's alive!
My entire planet died. My whole family. Do you think it never occurred to me to go back and save them?
But it's not like I've changed history. Not much. I mean, he's never going to be a world leader. He's not going to start World War III or anything.
Rose, there's a man alive in the world who wasn't alive before. An ordinary man. That's the most important thing in creation. The whole world's different because he's alive.
What, would you rather him dead?
I'm not saying
No,
that.
I get it. For once, you're not the most important man in my life.
Let's see how you get on without me then. Give me the key. The TARDIS key. If I'm so insignificant, give it me back.
All right, then I will.
Well, you've got what you wanted, so that's goodbye then.
You don't scare me. I know how sad you are. You'll be back in a minute. Will you hang around outside the TARDIS waiting for me? And I'll make you wait a long time!
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Hello, it's Scott, and I just opened up BB's iPlayer and I just saw the horrifying face of Peach Tyler smiling at me.
Yes, he's grinning at me right now as well. And that is because this...
We should make this picture the thumbnail.
We can try. I gotta do something with it. I have no ideas for thumbnails yet, actually, so we'll see. But
I gave you an idea yesterday. I like my idea.
I don't remember. Your idea was make it bad.
No, your idea was make it bad. I said this episode is much like the Flashpoint story of, the Flash. So do the Flash movie poster.
I couldn't tell you what the Flash movie poster is.
Let me look it up. Oh, it's very messy. There's heaps of them, and it's very messy. I can't tell if they're real or not.
The one with Ezra Miller running right at the screen and Batman's in the background.
Yeah, and Supergirl's there as well, and it's just...
Yeah.
It looks horrible.
It does, and apparently the movie's not good as well, so great.
The clip where Ezra
God, can
Miller...
I finish the intro? I haven't finished the goddamn intro to the show yet.
The clip where Ezra Miller puts the baby in the microwave is amazing.
Yes.
So it's the best clip of any movie ever.
It is. 10 out of 10. Anyway, so this week we are looking at Father's Day. We are taking a slight diversion away from looking at the Doctor Who chronologically, as this month is just ridiculously long. And so we figured we'd fill it in with an episode we've been meaning to cover since we started the podcast, really.
Yeah.
And so we are doing that now with Father's Day, which first aired on the 14th of May 2005, which was a Saturday and a very upsetting 18 years, 1 month and 8 days ago. I remember watching this episode live and saying it was 18 years ago is very upsetting. I would have been 5 years old. 5 years old when this came out.
To put the time distance in perspective, this episode is set 18 years before 2005. So we're at the same distance to this episode as they were to 1987.
Christ.
Mental.
That is crazy. At the time, the US president was George W. Bush, and the UK prime minister was Tony Blair. I have the vaguest of memories of Bush as president, and I straight up don't remember Tony Blair being prime minister at all, because not many 5-year-olds are really tuned into politics.
All I remember about Tony Blair is when he left office. I remember a video online going viral with like a 6-year-old girl saying she's gonna miss Tony Blair. And that's all I remember about his time in office.
Right. I don't remember his time in office at all. have the vaguest of memories of Gordon Brown being in office, and then anything after that is just sad memories of
the only thing
politics,
I
really.
remember of Gordon Brown is the TV show Heads, doing
Yeah,
a parody
yeah.
of him. A TV show Heads was basically like a
It's
mad
like a fever
TV.
dream. It's like a
It was
fever dream.
Yeah, it was like a mad TV series on BBC One or CBBC, where these bunch of characters had like paper cutout heads, and as the entire gimmick. There's a lot of Doctor Who stuff in there as well. It was terrible.
Doctor Who was very big at the time, so they were just capitalizing on it. But yeah, I remember watching that show. Occasionally as a kid, it was never like, oh my god, I can't wait for Talking Heads to be on. It was like, this is on TV and I'm in the room. Like, I haven't changed the channel yet to look for The Simpsons. But some interesting things that happened on this day. The first helicopter lands on top of Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world in the Himalayas. Didier Desalle, Eurocopter's test pilot, flew the standard production Eurocopter AS-350 Squirrel to the summit at 7:08 NPT, or 1 a.m. basically, in Universal, whatever the UTC is, I don't know, time zones. After staying there for 3 minutes and 50 seconds, he took off again, flying back to Nepal, which is cool, and I think probably the only real way to get up Mount Everest, because, I mean, climbing Everest in the first place is purely an egotistical trip.
Yeah.
You're doing it just for you, and you're putting your own life and other people's lives in danger doing it. But
It's very
helicopter
similar.
up there, 3 minutes.
To make it topical, going up Mount Everest is like going down to see the Titanic wreckage.
Yeah, it is very similar. Similar and yet polar opposites.
Yeah.
Because one you're dealing with a lack of air pressure, and the other you're dealing with just too much air pressure.
Yeah. That reference to the Titanic is not going to age well. It's going to be forgotten about next week. But
we'll see. It depends if they get found or not.
Probably
Because
not.
If they don't ever get found, you can guarantee there's going to be some really not very considerate conspiracy theories.
See,
about where they went.
last I heard about it was they had 8 hours of air left. I saw this like
Today's
12
the
hours
last
ago,
day.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
today
so-
that we're recording is the last day they have to find them, which we're recording this on the Thursday before it comes out.
great times. It's gonna be fun. And
Yeah.
all the jokes
What a
about it is
nightmare.
really disturbing.
There's a lot of memes about it for
Yeah.
sure. But what a nightmare way to go. Absolute nightmare. Jesus Christ. But also, just don't get into a coffin that goes under the sea that's not been approved by any regulatory bodies, maybe?
Yeah,
It
was
just an idea.
Well, it was controlled by a GameCube controller. Wasn't it?
No, it's controlled by a Logitech knockoff Xbox 360 controller.
I like GameCube controller at least. There's like, what was it, 3 knobs?
I don't remember. I haven't played a GameCube since I was like 4. But anyway, some other things that happened on this day. After being photographed pouring wine over a homeless man, Peter Goldstein, the financial minister of the German state Free Hanseatic city Bremen, resigned in shame. And I cannot imagine a more disgusting thing to do as a rich person, or 2, a more hilarious way to be fired as financial minister. Pouring wine on a homeless person, absolutely disgusting. A famous birthday that actually happened on this day and continues to happen on this day is one. It's also relevant as well. Is one Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh.
He was born on the
In
14th of May.
2005.
Yeah. He's got a weird, like, he grows really fast.
He's like Benjamin Button, or the Robin Williams movie Jack, where he's like 10 years old, but he looks like 80. Do you remember that movie?
I've never seen it.
It's very
I've never seen it. I feel like it's not going to have aged very well.
I think Bill Cosby is in it.
Oh, good. But of course, Mark Zuckerberg is famous, most famous right now in the news for going to beat up Elon Musk, which I'm all for. I'm looking forward to that because, as much as Zuck is like this weird nerdy alien guy, somehow Facebook has turned out to be the best social media site right now. I don't know how we've got to this point where Facebook is like, oh, I quite like Facebook right now, because Twitter's a hellscape, Reddit is just falling apart.
Yeah, the thing about Facebook that makes it better is you can choose mostly what you see on your timeline. Whereas on Twitter, if you look at one post from a bigot, that makes up your entire feed. And because, you know, Elon Musk is the head of Twitter, you see his posts, he's a bigot. So you see all the other bigots he follows. So it's great stuff.
There's also better meme groups on Facebook than most other social media sites. It's got some stuff going for it. And
there's also a really good Yellow Jackets discussion group where everybody understands what the show is about.
It's my favorite group ever. But Mark Zuckerberg, of course, you know, he's just won a jiu-jitsu tournament or some crap because he's like, what else is there to do except beat other men to death at this point?
I mean,
so
he does
he's
have
like straight
legs.
up.
He does have legs on Metaverse now, so I guess he could beat up people.
He is straight up like going to kill Elon Musk, who is not a man in shape, and who admitted himself very recently that he does not exercise at all. So he's going to die. Like, Zuckerberg will kill him. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be the collapse of culture. They should fight. They should fight for the rights of Twitter. If Zuckerberg wins, he gets Twitter. If Musk wins, he gets Facebook.
Are you going to do a pay-per-view for that if it ever happens?
Absolutely not. I will just read what happens after the fight. I'm not going to watch it. And then I'll look at clips, like if Zuckerberg wins and like knocks out like Musk's teeth or something, I'll be like, I'll watch that.
There's probably going to be like a pirate of it on Twitter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like a pirate live stream.
That would be so funny, especially if Musk loses. Well, wait, I mean, when Musk loses, not if. Is that Twitter just becomes flooded with it? That'd be great. Although I have a sneaking suspicion he'll back out of the fight before it ever happens. But anyway, could you guess, and I would be incredibly impressed with you if you could, the #1 movie at the box office on this day?
See, I was thinking about this as I was waiting around for you to finish doing whatever you were doing and start recording. The only thing I can think of is 2005. It's May, and the biggest movie of a year is probably Star Wars. Star Wars usually comes out in May in the before times. Was it Star Wars?
It was not Star Wars, but I want to see how far off you are from it being Star Wars. So Star Wars was the highest grossing movie of the year, for sure.
Oh shit, Star Wars came out May 19th. Like 5 days after this episode aired.
Yes,
I'm so close.
So Star Wars became #1 at the box office May 22nd. Is when it took over, and it was #1 at the box office into June until Madagascar took over.
Madagascar.
2005. 2005 is a good year for cinema.
It was. Can you give me a hint for what's #1 then? Because Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott.
It's a Ridley Scott movie.
2005. It's not. Was Gladiator 2000?
It is very similar. Very similar location to Gladiator.
I won't get this. What is it?
No. It's called Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh.
Kingdom of Heaven is a 2005 epic historical drama directed and produced by Ridley Scott and written by one William Mohannan. It features an ensemble cast featuring Orlando Bloom, Eva Green, Ghassan Massoud, Jeremy Irons, David Thewlis, Brendan Gleeson, Edward Norton, Morton Cossacks, Liam Neeson, Michael Sheen, Velibor Topic and Alexander Siddig. The whole film is a heavily fictionalized portrayal of the events leading to the Third Crusade, focusing mainly on Balian of Ibelin. I'm sorry for every pronunciation I'm doing right now. Who fights to defend the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem from Ayyubid Sultan Saladin. Filming took place in Morocco, where Scott had previously filmed Gladiator and Black Hawk Down, and in Spain, etc., etc. Film was released on the 6th of May by 20th Century Fox, received mixed reviews upon theatrical release, and grossed $218 million worldwide. In December of that year, Scott did what he loves to do, which is release a director's cut of the movie, which received critical acclaim, with many viewers calling it the definitive version of the film. And this is my problem with Ridley Scott movies, because Ridley Scott is one of those directors, kind of like Guy Ritchie, where they just pump out movies. Like, they're like somehow like they're just machines, and they're doing like 2-3 movies a year. And I feel like Guy Ritchie at least has got more of a consistent style and tone, where it's like, if you're watching a Guy Ritchie movie, you know what you're going to get, and it's going to be a pretty like solid 7 to 9 out of 10 experience. But with Ridley Scott, he's got some 10 out of 10 movies, and then some of the worst garbage ever. Like, he's so like inconsistent as it comes to a director. Like, he did recently The Last Duel, which is amazing, and then in the same year he released House of Gucci, which is apparently atrocious. So, like...
And also, to connect Ridley Scott to Doctor Who, he was originally tapped in to design the Daleks, but then he had to go off and do something else. I'm not sure what he went off to do, but obviously he had a successful career, and he makes movies that are either good or bad. He is one of the, you know, probably most iconic sci-fi filmmakers ever. You know, he does have a fantastic filmography underneath him, and he is one of my favorite directors, despite the fact I've not seen most of his movies, because I think he's got his list is too big. I've probably seen maybe half of the films he's made. The last movie I saw of his was The Martian. That was pretty decent.
Martian's good. I really recommend The Last Duel. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
It's fucking fantastic.
He also did All the Money in the World, which is kind of a movie I never want to watch, but it's kind of wild because we obviously had to recast Kevin Spacey in like 10 days.
Oh.
Because the movie, obviously the whole scandal of Kevin Spacey came out, and it was like, is this movie going to be released at all? Because if it is, it's going to be a nightmare. But it was basically reshot in like 20 days before it came out, which is mental.
That is crazy. It reminds me a lot of Tig, on whatever her last name is, replacing that creepy dude in the Zack Snyder movie. And like, she didn't shoot a single scene with the rest of the cast, and she's just CGI'd in, and it's honestly flawless. Which is the best thing that movie's got going for it, because I couldn't sit through it because the cinematography was atrocious.
In a Zack Snyder movie? Never. Zack Snyder always has the best.
I usually really like Zack Snyder's cinematography, but in this one, he was directly in charge. Like, he was the cinematographer, and he was filming it with the camera, and everything is just depth of field. And I was like, this is like nauseating. I can't watch this.
That's how I felt watching Batman v Superman. I just started getting nauseous. Watching it
I really liked the cinematography. That was like the one thing that movie had going for me. Was Batman v Superman, was the cinematography. I was like, this is a really pretty movie, and I hate it. It's really bad.
Hell, it looks a lot better than The Flash. To bring it back around full circle.
But there was one other movie that came out that managed to eke in to the number one at the box office just before Revenge of the Sith came out. And this was a movie called Monster in Law. Is a 2005 romantic comedy film directed by Robert Luketic, written by Anya Koshoff, starring Jennifer Lopez, Jade Fonda, Martin Verton, and Wanda Sykes. It was a return to cinema for Jane Fonda, it was her first film in 15 years since she did Stanley and Iris in 1990, and the film was absolutely destroyed by critics who praised Fonda's performance but panned the screenplay and Jennifer Lopez's performance. However, the movie was a box office success. I've never heard of it. It looks like the most generic rom-com from the early 2000s, if you just imagine what a rom-com from the early 2000s looks like, that's this movie. It's got the poster and everything. I just thought it was interesting that managed to somehow eke its way into the top 10 right before or into the highest grossing of the week, until Star Wars jumped in and be like, nah, we're in charge now.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm just looking at the poster. When you said the title, I thought it was going to be like a horror movie where the mother-in-law is a real monster.
Yeah, no,
that would have been cool.
It's the most generic looking rom-com poster you've ever seen in your life. It's a really bad Photoshop job as well.
Jane Fonda is ripping up like a photo of whoever these people are. Jennifer Lopez and whatever the male lead is.
Yeah, it looks bad. I'm never going to watch it. I'm glad I don't. But, of course, May 22nd, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the best Star Wars movie ever made, comes into box office, blesses everybody's eyes. I never got to see this in cinema because I was 5 years old. And I don't know if I had even been to the cinema yet at 5 years old. But I watched this movie to death on DVD. Loved it. I can quote the entire movie. I can replay the whole movie. I've seen it countless times. It's one of my favorite films ever made.
Yeah,
I adore it.
I never saw this movie until much later on. I just remember all the marketing. The marketing was wild for this movie. You couldn't. Every fucking advert on like Cartoon Network or whatever was just for Star Wars Episode 3. It was mental.
It's interesting because I was living in Germany at the time, and I don't remember marketing for it at all. The most I have for it is my DVD off Revenge of the Sith is a German DVD that's Diversion of the Sith. It's an English DVD because you can just change language on the thing, but yeah, it's a German DVD box. But it is like the limited edition. I got like when I was a kid, it must have been for a birthday or Christmas, the limited edition collection that comes with the original theatrical cuts of the original trilogy and the remastered cuts. So that's a fun collector's thing I've got. But yeah, love that movie.
Have you ever watched the badly translated Chinese version of the movie? It is amazing.
I have seen clips. I remember a few years ago when that got big on YouTube. I have seen clips of it, but I never sat and watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember the ending where Darth Vader is like, no. Instead, he says, no, do not want.
That's fantastic. But before we move on to the writer's corner for this episode, I just want to list through you some of these 2005 movies, because this might be one of the best years in cinema. So you've got Robots. Mm-hmm. Incredibly underrated animated movie.
I haven't seen it in so long, but I've loved that movie as a kid. Yeah. And the PS2 game was also great.
I never had the PS2 game, but I did love it as a kid. You've got Sin City. Fantastic movie. You've got Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Underrated movie. Not very similar to the books, but similar in enough ways, but I think it stands alone as its own great thing. Then, of course, you've got Revenge of the Sith. Then you've got Madagascar, Batman Begins, War of the Worlds, Fantastic Four, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Four Brothers, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, yes. Doom, Saw 2, Chicken Little, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then King Kong. What a year. Yeah. What a year for blockbusters.
And a very memorable year because, Doctor Who was also around this time, and I think both of us were really getting into Doctor Who around this time.
It's what I would call the peak of culture. This is where 2005 is when humanity peaked. But yeah, 2005 was a good year for cinema. For blockbusters specifically, I'm not too versed on like independent movies that came out in 2005, because again, I was 5 years old. All I watched was blockbusters and kids films. But yeah, that's all I've got for on this day, Scott. So why don't you take us into the writer's corner?
Probably one of our longest on this day in history segments, to be honest.
Yeah, I got distracted.
A good 20 minutes, I think that was.
Yeah, just rambly.
So yeah, this year I've been picking episodes from each Doctor, and obviously this is a bit of a break, but this episode was still important to me as a kid. So I'm going to take you through like my personal history of Doctor Who. So I missed the first 4 episodes of the show, and I only started with World War III, which was the second part of the Slovene 2-parter. And when I watched World War III, I was like, haha, still aliens, Spartan. This show is great. And then, the week after we got Dalek, like one of the scariest shit I saw as a kid. Like that episode freaked me the fuck out. After that episode, it was The Long Game, which was a pretty decent episode. I remember it being pretty decent. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Game.
Like,
what episode is that? I'm going to need to.
it's the episode where they go to Satellite 5.
Oh yeah. That episode's fun.
Yeah, it's got Simon Pegg in it, and obviously the episode after that is Father's Day, which is where I truly got hooked on the show. So this is a bit personal, but in October 2004, my dad died. So I was like 7 years old, and when this episode came out, I was obviously still in grief, and I was having a terrible time. And suddenly, this show I was really getting into had an episode about what I was going through, and I felt represented. It really helped me through a lot of grief. And yeah, this episode was important to me as a kid. So that's my little history of how I chose this episode. So
yeah. I don't have the same relationship with this episode. The most relationship I have with this episode is thinking that the monster was very silly. With the big bats that are like, we'll eat time. That never come back again whenever there's a plot hole.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can fully understand why this episode means a lot to you. There's not really. I don't really have many personal, like, there's no deaths in my family or anything like that. It's I live a boring, easy life, but I'm glad that you could find something in this episode. 'Cause yeah, I don't even remember what my reaction to this episode was as a kid. Most of my memories from season 1 of this show are mainly from having Doctor Who trading cards off the villains. From The Long Game, I remember having the card for whatever the hell the name of that monster was that was upside down, eating Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
I like that's my that episode. I'm like, oh yes, I had that card. I think I had a big book full of all the goddamn cards. I wish I still had it because it would be amazing to go through those Doctor Who cards again and just be filled with nostalgia.
Yeah, I actually do have a booklet of all my Battles and Times cards. I need to dig that out. I don't think I got too much of the cards, but it's a decent collection.
I was so into trading cards as a kid, and like. It helped that my entire school was as well. I went to a really, really small primary school in the countryside. Like, we had like 80 students in the entire school. Very, very small school. But everybody was into trading cards. Like, everybody played Yu-Gi-Oh! And I got super into Yu-Gi-Oh! And I remember being at school and there were like 15, 20 different Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels going on around me, and it was the coolest thing ever. So, like, if there was a trading card, I got really into it. The only one I never got into was Bakugan, because it was expensive, and you had to buy the toy to go with it, and I was like, that seems like a waste of money.
Yeah. I believe we've been through this discussion before, but when I was a kid, I was never really into anime. I was never into Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Bakugan, or any of the other...
a dork. Pure dork.
But, in 2005, 2006, I really got into Doctor Who and obviously got all the trading cards. And I found kids at my school who really, really liked the trading cards as well. And we would just play Battles in Time. I don't remember how the game even worked. It was probably dead easy. And me and the other kids would swap. Oh, I have duplicates, so I'll give you this card and you give me this card. And that's how I obtained cards sometimes. Sometimes I would get cards that were ripped from somebody, and I'd be very pissed off if they were trying to offer me a ripped card when I was given a mint condition card. But
I think the only person that was really into the Doctor Who cards with me was my brother. So we would get and collect and trade amongst ourselves, but nobody really at school was into the Doctor Who cards like we were. I don't even remember how big Doctor Who was at school. 'Cause, like a couple of my friends were really into it, but like me and my brother specifically were like really into Doctor Who, the two of us.
It wasn't.
no,
It
good
wasn't
time.
the most popular thing at my school, but it was fairly popular. Like I would befriend people who'd later bully me in life. So based on our love of Doctor Who, and I would also get bullied for watching Doctor Who, which was you know,
Imagine growing up in the city where you can get bullied in primary school. I don't think I got bullied for ever liking a show. In my school experience. But.
Do kids still do trading? I don't think so. Do they still do trading cards? Like I guess it's NFT cards nowadays.
I think it would depend on one, the location of the school, and two, the like zeitgeist trend. Because Magic the Gathering is still big, but I don't know if it's big in school or if it's just big with kids that were in school and are now adults that still play Magic the Gathering.
Oh, I guess like football cards are still popular because we do get kids in my store who just really want football cards, but it's not.
That's just because football's popular. Yeah. That's just because like when I was at school, me and my friends would go up into a classroom and play Yu-Gi-Oh and play Magic the Gathering and stuff like that because we were, of course, the cool kids at school. But I don't know if that still goes on. Right now, right now the weirdest thing is the thing that kids are into collecting is Prime bottles.
Yes.
Which is like you drink it and then you can't do anything. You can't even battle with the Prime bottles.
Yeah, I remember us talking about Prime at the very beginning of the year when we were doing Time Meddler, and like we would get an entire delivery, like a cage of Prime. Like maybe over 100 bottles, and they'd be sold out within the day. And now,
Jesus Christ.
Prime is less popular, but people obviously still buy it. Instead, we have Energy Prime, which is little cans of energy drinks, which is obviously Prime, and that's the new thing. You can't sell it to people over 16, though, because it's
you can't sell it to people over 16.
Sorry, under 16.
16 and under. This is just for kids. All this caffeine can only go to kids. The adults
under
can't have
16.
Yeah, but, you know, you must be one of the few shops that actually enforce that rule, because I can guarantee you the shops where I live, they don't ID anybody for energy drinks at all.
Have you ever had Prime?
It's a fun place.
Have you had
I have. I've never bought a bottle. The only times I've had it is when my little brother, who is a child and likes Prime, is like, "Hey, Matthew, do you want to have a drink?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, I'll have a sip." And it is a very sweet drink.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine. It's juice. It's a juice. It's a bit sweet for me to want to go out and buy my own can. You know, I'm more of a I'll just give me an energy drink or a coffee type dude. But, you know, if kids like it, cool. I think there's cooler things they should like. Like, I think they should bring back Doctor Who trading cards and just get everybody really flood the streets with them.
I've never had Prime myself, and I don't want to. I don't want to give the two people behind it money, you know, Logan Paul and KSI. I don't think they're good role models for young kids, to be honest with you. And it's kind of disturbing that so many kids want to buy Prime and give them money.
Yeah, it comes from, I mean, we're getting completely sidetracked here, but it does come from a weird trend that I noticed when I was a teenager. Like, when I was a kid growing up watching YouTube, I would watch people playing video games, and I would watch people talking about movies, and I still to this day, that's what I watch on YouTube. Like, I watch people playing video games, and I watch people talking about movies. That's what YouTube is to me. But my little brother, when he's growing up and he's watching YouTube, he's not really watching people play video games or watching people talk about movies. He's watching people show off their mansion. He's watching people show off their brand new fancy car. It's this weird glorification of extreme wealth that like took over YouTube completely. And, you know, the likes of like Mr. Beast and Logan Paul and stuff like that, they are 100% the reason that trend happened. There's a helicopter flying apparently just really low to my house right now, but the you know, that they're the reason that this I think it's quite frankly a disgusting trend of glorifying wealth. And it really puts in a weird mindset for kids, you know?
Andrew Tate is probably like the worst example of somebody who's wealthy and shows off her mansion and cars and misogynistic views, and he's thankfully maybe going to jail for life, so let's keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well there and he gets locked away. Good times. God, but
Internet's
anyway,
a hellscape.
we are here to talk about Doctor Who, Father's Day. This is written by Paul Cornell, and this is his first episode of Doctor Who, although he did a bunch of Doctor Who books, and even did Scream of Shalka, which we're doing next month. I'm looking forward to that one, where it's the unofficial Ninth Doctor, played by Richard E. Grant.
That sounds interesting.
He obviously also did Human Nature and Family of Blood, which we've covered in the past in this show, and we loved those episodes so much. It's probably in our top 10 episodes, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the best two-parters ever.
So Davies chose Paul Cornell for this episode because he thought the strengths of his Doctor Who books were that they were highly emotive, and he was a perfect fit for the episode where Rose comes to deal with the death of her father. So obviously, Paul Cornell was in place to write an episode in December 2003, not knowing which episode that he'd be working on until early 2004, when he was contracted for this episode in particular, and his key instruction was to make us cry. Did you cry?
No. I didn't cry when I don't remember crying as a kid watching it, and I didn't cry as an adult watching it, but again, I have no association with grief. My entire family is still alive, so...
You lucky bitch.
It's crazy, I have a huge family as well.
So the original titles for this episode was Rose's Father and Wounded Time. I prefer Father's Day, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So Russell T Davies wanted an emotionally based storyline to show that Rose isn't a perfect companion, and so she needed to make a mistake under extraordinary circumstances based on human emotion. They just basically did the Adam arc to highlight how perfect she was, because, the last two episodes were focused on Adam becoming the new companion of the show. And he does a major screw up in the long game. I can't remember what the fuck he does, but...
He gets the surgery on his head that unlocks the door to his brain. Where you click, and then his forehead opens up to show his brain. And that was to do with... That did something. I don't remember what it did, but that's what he did that really annoyed the Doctor.
Yeah, and he kicked him out at the end of the episode to highlight, not all companions are perfect for the Doctor, and some companions are just assholes, so... Rose is a perfect companion, except for when she makes mistakes in this episode.
It also helps that the Doctor wants to bone Rose, in a really, which I like that they address in this episode, where they're like, he's a bit old for you, isn't he? Don't you think he's a bit old? That's a bit gross. Which is okay, because the Doctor's got a cunning plan for that one. He's going to regenerate into a younger guy.
I remember as a kid reading more into the Doctor as a father figure for Rose, and this is the episode that explains why I read that as a kid. He's gonna teach her a lot about life and stuff, but instead it turns into romance.
He turns into more of a stepdad than a real dad.
So Russell also wanted to make the episode a period piece, even if it was the recent setting of 1987. Again, 18 years ago, 2005. In 2005, 18 years before 2005 was 1987.
It's crazy. It's crazy as well, because he's like, we're set. It's a period piece, but the 1985 was pretty recently, so it's like that. As a kid, 1985 feels like forever.
I know.
It feels like, oh my god, that's so far in the past. And I obviously I was born in 2000, so I cannot imagine what 1985 it's just an imaginary year to me. It's so far gone from any sort of closeness that I'm it's set so far in the past, that's fine, but it would be like setting an episode nowadays in 2005. I'd be like, and so it's 2005 feels like it was yesterday.
Even some of the 2005 elements of this episode, when Rose pulls out her
the mobile phone. Yeah.
The episode makes a big point about 1980s.
Look how modern,
phones.
Look how modern this 2005 phone is. Oh my god, so futuristic.
And even the hairstyles in 2005 was very different.
God.
The spiky frosted tipped hair. You know,
Which
like,
is it's interesting because the hairstyles now are very different, but the hairstyles now are like 1985.
It's so weird. I wonder what an episode set in 2005 would be like. I wonder if Russell T Davies would ever go down the route again.
I would be down for it. I would like some of that early 2000s nostalgia. That's what we're coming into the right era.
Yeah.
For 2000s nostalgia to come in, which is
Crazy.
what I'm looking forward to happening.
So Russell T Davies was inspired by the original Twilight Zone series, which often told sci-fi stories about human nature. He designed this as a cheap episode without any CGI needed. I mean, obviously, this episode became the episode with probably the most CGI of the season.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a lot of CGI in this episode. Although that is something about like 2000, like this is 2005 on a BBC One budget for Doctor Who. I think season 1 special effects hold up really, really well. Like, we've covered a couple season 1 episodes, and there's never been, like, there's some times where you're like, oh, that's definitely CGI I'm looking at, but it's never bad enough CGI that it takes you out completely. Like, there's CGI in this that is 100% better than most of the CGI in Flux. 100% better.
Yeah, I went into this episode expecting it to look horrible, because I haven't seen it since I was a kid, basically. It's not an episode I revisit quite often for obvious reasons. So I was expecting the CGI to look poor, and the CGI really, honestly holds up, I would say. Like, well, it doesn't hold up entirely, but it looks really decent.
For something that came out in 2005, it's more than acceptable.
Yes. And, you know, 2 years after this, ITV would make a TV show on Saturday nights called Primeval, which was about dinosaurs invading modern London. And, you know, they hired The Mill, the company behind the special effects of this episode. I think ITV were watching this episode being like, holy shit, we can achieve a really good Jurassic Park-esque show on this budget. Hire these people, because... I don't remember the special effects of Primeval looking any good, but you know.
I remember being a kid watching Primeval and thinking the effects look good. I guarantee they probably have aged terribly, but I remember in 2005 the effects being like, oh yeah, no, these are dinosaurs. This looks like they're with dinosaurs right now. Like, it looked good for the time.
Because ITV at the time, when this episode aired, they were showing a show called, I don't know what the show was called, but it was really poorly reviewed and received. Obviously, they had big competition with Doctor Who, because Doctor Who easily beat them out on Saturday night. So they were looking for something on Saturday night to beat Doctor Who. And I don't think Primeval was ever on the same time as Doctor Who, but it was a good Doctor Who-like show for them to have, for sure.
Yeah. It was, you know, the shows I remember liking as a kid of this vein is Doctor Who, Primeval, Merlin. Like, that was the three where I was like, these are the three shows that are, like, top-tier shows right now on TV.
There was also Robin Hood, which I never watched. That was also, like, a show that was made for a Doctor Who audience. Like, a lot of BBC One shows were just, like, after Doctor Who, they just rotate to Merlin and then Robin Hood. So they just have a constant lineup of quality Saturday night shows, honestly.
It was a good time for BBC. It was a really good time for BBC
and now
shows, for sure.
you wanna look at what's on Saturday night now, because it's probably just like,
I assume it's like a game show.
Yeah, BBC One schedule Saturday.
BBC One. Oh, TV Guide. I could just look at the TV Guide.
Yeah, on Saturday night at 5:40 p.m. you've got the Hit List. It's a celebrity special, that show. It looks like a game show. And then at 6:25, you've got Michael McIntyre's The Wheel, which is also a game show. And then after that, you've got Pointless Celebrities, which is also a game show. And then you got Casualty.
Yep, which is a medical drama, and then it's Glastonbury.
Yeah, so...
yeah, it's...
And I believe most of these game shows are also repeats, so... really nothing new.
It's the problem with live TV now is because nobody watches live TV, but the thing that people do watch on live TV is events. So game shows, sporting events, music festivals. Those are the things that still pull in viewers that live TV just cannot do.
I wonder what is going to happen when Doctor Who returns to Saturday nights, because there's no way Russell is going to have put Doctor Who on Sunday again. I do wonder what kind of competition we'll see on Saturday nights from now on when, Doctor Who is broadcasted at like 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. I wonder what it's going to be like.
I don't think we're going to see much competition at all, because I think what we'll get a big spike in viewers for the specials. Where we go up to maybe 8-9 million at a push for those specials, and then when the series starts properly with Shooty, we're going to drop back down to 5 million. And it's going to be 5, because that's your core Doctor Who audience, 5 million people, and then everybody else is going to watch it on iPlayer on catch up whenever they feel like watching it, or they'll be in America and they'll watch it on Disney Plus.
The genius now is that worldwide the show is broadcast on Disney Plus, so Saturday night on BBC One doesn't really matter as much as it did back in 2005.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like it's also like they don't reveal streaming numbers. Like no streaming site reveals streaming numbers, so it's impossible to know if a show is successful or not. Now, which is lame.
Oh yeah, like you'll constantly see, this Disney Plus show got the highest ratings ever with 1 million watched hours. It's like, but it's also like I go into Netflix, I look at the trending tab, and I'm like, I don't believe for a fucking second that any of these shows are trending. I do not believe that this show from 2015 that I glimpsed at briefly is suddenly trending right now in 2023. I feel like you just want me to watch it. So the original concept for this episode had Rose sitting in a cafe where she would watch her father die while crossing the road with his friend laughing and being distracted. She would watch this happen over and over again, basically like Groundhog Day. Paul Cornell disliked this idea because it would basically diminish the impact of a tragedy if you just saw it like 100 times in one episode.
Which is fair. That is fair.
The framing device would have Jackie, who was then called Judy, recounting the events from 2005, and they would cut back and forth between the two time periods. The episode was also considered to be a doctorless episode at some point, and at another point it was considered to be a roseless episode. So basically, like in the Russell T Davies era, they would have episodes where the Doctor doesn't appear as much in the episode because, Christopher Ecclestone is filming another episode of a season, and that was a way to keep costs down and to have two episodes be shot at once, because production on these shows were a nightmare.
Production on anything is always a nightmare. It's the worst part of making films is making the film. It sucks.
So the original draft of this episode would have been a Roseless episode where Rose isn't really involved in the story that much. Maybe she'd be in it for like 10 minutes or something, which would be really weird because, Rose is the heart of the story. But so in this original draft, Pete would get hit by a lorry after a 5-year-old Rose stepped onto the road. Rose would then save herself, which created a discharge of energy when they touched, which creates timey-wimey nonsense I wrote down here. One end of the street has futuristic buildings, and the other side is just a countryside. The Doctor and Rose go into a 1960s pub, which becomes a 40s pub on the inside. The Doctor teams up with policemen from different time periods to try and calm people down. There's also Celtic warriors running around for some reason. The Reapers in this story would have been more like traditional robe Grim Reapers who are trying to get to the bottom of the time problems. And they pluck displaced people they just basically kill off time displaced people. Rose would be disappointed in learning more about her dad, which is kind of the only thing that's really kept in this episode, in the final version. One of the Reapers would duplicate Pete, and the Doctor would push the clone in front of a truck to trick time, and the real Pete survives and divorces Jackie, and Rose is very depressed by the new timeline that she created. So
Oh my god. Yeah, okay, so this version that we got in the actual episode is so much better than that original story idea, because that story idea sucks. That is a bad that sucks. That is just bad idea after bad idea.
yeah, it's way too complicated. You know, I like how the final version is just very simple. It's a very simple story, really. I do like the idea of the time being displaced by different periods appearing in the same place. It reminds me of the series 6 final, The Wedding of River Song, you know, where Charles Dickens is giving a BBC One interview. Winston Churchill is the president of the world or whatever. Is a dinosaur flying around or...
Yeah, that's a fun episode.
The second version of the draft was very similar to the first, mostly being set in a pub with a lot of time-displaced people, but the ending changed to where the Doctor gets engulfed by a Reaper, and Pete runs in front of the car to reverse the time changer. So it's starting to become the version we know at this point towards the end. He got rid of the pub angle because he found it too limited in terms of the story, so... From like the third draft onwards, it began to be shaped like it was in the final version. Just some differences, like instead of a church, it was a random person's house. At one point, the pregnant lady would have a boy instead of a girl or whatever. Somebody who was a teenager would turn into an old man. But the basic shape of the episode would form here from the third draft. Paul Cornell became inspired by the Angel episode I Will Always Remember You and the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode The Wish. Are you familiar with these episodes?
Not by name. I'm not familiar with Angel at all as a show. I might know the Buffy episode if you were to describe the plot, but I've seen maybe half of Buffy and I've seen none of Angel. So
yeah, The Wish was an episode of Buffy where Cordelia would make a wish that Buffy would never come to Sunnydale. And in this new timeline, Buffy never came to Sunnydale, so that vampires start ruling the entire town, and the town is just in complete chaos. Friends she knew is now vampires, and everyone's dead, basically. And it's a terrible time until the end of the episode where she reverses the wish, and things become normal again. The Angel episode is an episode of Angel, which is a crossover with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where the vampire angel gets the chance to become human, and he restarts his relationship with Buffy because they broke up a few years ago. And in the episode, he realizes that he really needs to become a vampire again to get like the super strength to be able to fight crime and shit like that. So then the timeline gets restored and he becomes a vampire again, and the whole day is ruined. The whole day is erased from time, basically. And that's where he got the inspiration for Father's Day, basically. Rose does something to create a time disturbance, and then it gets undone at the end.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I can see that connection.
So, yeah, we are ready for the episode, I think.
Christ, an hour in. It's going to be a long one. But yes, let us now dive in at long last into Father's Day.
I gave you my car keys. You don't give your keys to a complete stranger. It's like I trusted you. The moment I met you, I just did. A wound in time. You called me Dad. I could see it. In my eyes. Jackie's attitude. You sound like her when you shout. You are. You're my Rose. You're my Rose grown up.
So the episode begins with a terrifying look at Rose's dad's face as a still image, as we get told briefly the year that he died, which is a really sad way to start an episode. And we also like get a scene with little baby Rose, Tyler, and Jackie looking at like old photographs, talking about like how great her dad is and stuff like that. Before cutting to the inside of the TARDIS.
I will say, 6-year-old Rose is cast perfectly. Looks a lot like Billie Piper. You can even tell by the lips. Like good casting overall, I would say. And
it's
this opening
definitely a
to
blonde
me,
little child.
This opening to me as a kid, my heart immediately sank. I was like, oh god, like what a depressing opening.
It's a heavy opening for sure. And we cut into the TARDIS where Rose is like, can I go see my dad before he died? That's not against the rules or anything. And the Doctor's like, there is no rules, lol, let's do it. Which goes against everything. This happens several different times in this episode where they say stuff and they establish stuff that causes so many plot holes in the future and so many issues where you're like, wait, how does this work? So like this episode basically just exists in its own bubble, because this episode, I think, out of most other Doctor Who episodes, does not blend into the show. Like this is one of the hardest ones to make sense canon wise, because so many of the things they say, it's like, how, what do you mean about that? Like,
and see, I can understand the Doctor just letting Rose see her dad when he's dying, because that's not going to affect the timeline in any way whatsoever. Just saying goodbye to your dad, and maybe even if she was like, oh yeah, I'm your daughter from the future, like that wouldn't break the timeline because he's dead, But it's an incredible risk, It's such an incredible risk to be there, because even Jackie in this episode is like, yeah, your father died alone. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, your father died with a teenage girl talking to him. That's weird. And even then it'd be like, did my husband sleep with this girl that he was talking to in the end? Like that ruins the timeline somewhat.
But there's episodes, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more when they bring it up in the actual scene. But like it brings up like saving people from death in the past. Like why can the Doctor get away with doing that without these things attacking? And it's like, oh, because he knows what he's doing, which is the vaguest explanation ever. Like he knows which people are supposed to die and which people he can save. Like he's omnipotent. It's a lot of like, oh, we just kind of like, it works in this episode, but when you try to use the rules of this episode on other episodes, the rules they establish do not work in other episodes.
Yeah, the problem is the Doctor saves lives every episode. How does he know which lives are a fixed point in history? Because him being in every event in history, what was him being there a fixed event? I don't think so. So, like,
it's messy, it's timey-wimey, but for the rules that they set up in this episode, they follow consistently in this episode.
Yes.
At least, in other episodes, the rules in this one don't matter, but don't worry about that.
This is one of the few episodes you have to think of as like a movie that's not connected to anything in Doctor Who, because otherwise your head will explode. The scene in the TARDIS is shot really well, because it does a pan out to the two characters inside of the TARDIS to remind you that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. Like the TARDIS looks enormous in this scene, and this Doctor Who was a relatively new show when this started, so it gives the audience a chance to remind themselves, oh yeah, the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. So when the Doctor opens the doors in like 10 minutes, it's like, oh shit, the TARDIS is small again, because it ruins the impact if you can't remember that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside.
I also think it's one of the nicest shots we've ever had with the TARDIS. It's not often we get that pullback look at the scale of look how big it is. Because usually it's just like, yeah, we're in, it's bigger on the inside, whatever, let's just keep going. But this is like an actual nice wide shot that we get with the TARDIS, which I think is too far and few between when it comes to TARDISes,
And also, them just being very small in the frame makes it look like we're both just very lonely people, which is like a big theme of the episode. Just they've lost so much, basically.
Yep. But then the episode continues. We get the intro credits, and we cut to the Doctor and Rose watching her mum and her dad's wedding, which I forgot that this happened even in the episode. It plays like no part into it at all. And it also makes what the Doctor does next even stranger, because like surely taking Rose to the wedding where you can watch your parents be somewhat happy together, like he messes up saying her name and everything, it's a bit awkward, but they do get married. Like surely that's a better way of remembering what your father was like and learning what your father was like than then being like, okay, now let's watch him die. Let's go to see him die. That'd be pretty cool, right? When you just watch them get married, let's watch him die. Like
it's a traumatizing experience to watch your dad die and you know what's happening. Like I can't think of why the Doctor would agree to this even.
I know. And he's like Christopher Ecclestone's looking at Rose the entire time like, this is weird. What are you doing? Like, you sure you want to do this? This is weird. But, like, you're going along with it. You could just say no. She doesn't know how to fly the TARDIS. You can just be like, that seems like a bad idea and really unhealthy. Let's go instead to, like, the week before your dad died so you can make sure he had a good week, like a dog that's getting put down, You can go out, you can go to the park with him, throw the ball around, take him to the beach, and then we'll be like, okay, we know what's going to happen now. But
I will say, before the credits start, they do another slow zoom in on one of the photographs of Pete, which reminds me of the classic series, when the Doctor's face would appear in the intro and it'd be a very creepy smile.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
It's okay. You made me lose what I was about to say. But yes, that Rose asked to go see the day that her dad died, and the Doctor, for whatever reason, agrees and comes out into 1987, where they're like, "Oh, I thought it would be worse weather. It's just kind of like any other day." They go to the scene where he's get hit by the car, and we pan across the wall, where we just see some more 1987 stuff, like No Third Term for Thatcher by the Socialist Worker, which I think is really fun to see, and something that if it was included today in Doctor Who would cause a huge upstir on Twitter, which I would love to see. There's been this weird rise recently in right-wing people on the online area calling everybody else Marxists, which I'm all for. I'm all for. I think it's really funny. But I think this is Doctor Who's indoctrinating the youth with Marxist ideologies type deal, and I'm all for it. I think it's really cool.
My favorite thing about Twitter at the moment is people on the right being like, "Oh yeah, the people on the left are too sensitive these days." And then they get,
that's always been the case. That's always been you're saying we're too sensitive and you're yelling at me because I'm in a rainbow costume.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it reminds me of the guy in the Lego store shouting about anal sex to a guy wearing a rainbow pin talking about sexualizing kids, and he's yelling anal sex.
You're the one talking about anal sex right now, sir.
This is also the street that comes again at the series final, where the Doctor dumps Rose back on Earth and we have to try and kickstart the TARDIS again. This is the same street. I don't know if it's intentional for them.
It's probably not.
Probably
it's
not.
Probably just like this is a cheap street to book out.
But we'll see it again in a few months when we do whatever the series final is called.
Yeah. We also get as we're panning along this wall with posters, a poster that says "Energize" with what looks like coronaviruses behind the smiley face, which somebody has graffitied "Bad Wolf" on, which of course at this point in watching the show, you don't know what that means. You're like, okay, you probably wouldn't even notice it the first time watching it.
I definitely didn't, and I think it was episode 11 of the series where they're in Margaret Slevine's office, and they suddenly realize, oh shit, this message has been following us the entire time, and we keep cutting back to previous episodes, and I'm like, holy shit, this is mind-blowing. It's like the most mind-blowing twist I ever experienced as a kid.
It was phenomenal as a kid experiencing that Bad Wolf twist. It's very, very cool, and I wish I could experience it again because I know it's there and I know where to look for it. Now the twist is forever ruined for me because I'm just like, boom, bad wolf, bad wolf, bad wolf, bad wolf. It's so obvious. How did nobody see this? You know?
And Russell never really topped himself because obviously next season is Torchwood. We were all looking out for like key words or phrases that repeats themselves. In season 3, it was Vote Saxon, which we also all spotted. In season 4, well, the stars are going out in season 4. That's it. But yeah, we all spotted the themes immediately.
Season 4, they have a Dr. Donna. That's done pretty well. Where they say Dr. Donna a couple times in some episodes, but you think it's just referring to the two of them and not Dr. Donna. You know, Donna with the Time Lord's brain. Which I think that one was done pretty well.
I mean, even Moffat did it with the Pandora opens and the silence will come and whatever.
I think Moffat did it the best. But also that's just because I like Moffat's I'm so clever writing, you know, with the Impossible Astronaut and stuff like that. The timey-wiminess of it all. Big fan. But yeah, it's cool. The episode continues then as they then just watch Rose's dad die. And the doctor's like, you can go over and speak to him, so he's got somebody with him if you want. And Rose doesn't manage. We cut to them at the wall where she's like, it's too late now. I can't do anything. We can't see again. And then she goes, can I try again? Which, at this point, if you're the doctor, you realize you've made a mistake. You shouldn't have taken her to watch her dad die. That was a weird decision on your half. And you say, no, sorry, time is fixed. We only had one shot. We could go back and you could see him the week before he died and we can go to the beach and treat him like a dead dog, whatever. But instead he goes, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just break the rules of time and go into my own timeline, which is an established thing in Doctor Who where it's like you don't remember what's going to happen and it creates its own little weird time bubble thing or whatever. You know, whatever explanation they come up with for multi-Doctor stories. But in this episode, the Doctor just does it no harm, no foul. Yeah. And, you know, it is technically still a multi-Doctor story. Even if it is the same Doctor twice, it's still a multi-Doctor story. But yeah, I think that's my biggest gripe with it, is the Doctor going back into his own timeline with, like, no problems. You know? Yeah,
I mean, Rose runs directly past Rose and the Doctor, and they just disappear. For some reason,
time just like goes delete.
Yeah, like I don't understand how that works in the show's canon either. Again, it just if you look too closely, none of this makes any sense because you know when Amy Pond kind of meets herself in The Girl Who Waited, the episode where she grows old on the Garden Planet, whatever the fuck it was. And there's also young Amy Pond, and they kind of meet, but none of that ever happens.
But I think
it's all made up.
It is all made up, but I think that episode handles it better and in a more quote unquote realistic, like it makes sense in the show sort of way where they see each other and that doesn't cause young Amy to suddenly vanish into the nether. You know, they see each other and they're like, oh my god, this is weird, you're me. And she's like, yeah, I'm you, but from the future. Ha 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 ha. Because time isn't linear in Doctor Who. You know, it's timey-wimey. It's a big ball of stuff. Where all sorts of things can interconnect and see each other at different times. The Doctor and Rose vanishing feels to me like linear time because this is now a new timeline where they never stayed to watch. Instead, this is the timeline where Rose interrupted. So the timeline where they watched no longer exists, and that's been erased from history. So it's just this weird timeline rule that Doctor Who never follows again, because the time travel in this episode works different to every single other episode of Doctor Who.
I do like when Rose asks if she could do it again. We get an extreme close-up on the Doctor's eyes, and you can kind of see kind of like pain behind his eyes. You can just kind of tell that he's letting her do it because he can't do it himself. He can't say goodbye to his own people. And you get that in this moment. It's very dramatic, just the extreme close-up on his eyes.
Yeah, you also get, like, with Rose making these weird choices, you can understand when you remember that she's supposed to be 19. I always forget Rose is 19 because she looks 25. Yeah. But Like a teenager making these impulsive choices and like running out into traffic to save her
Yeah.
dad makes a lot more sense than a 25-year-old woman doing it. But anyway, she runs out to save her dad, and she's like, "Oh my god, I just saved your life." She's in total shock about it, and the dad's like, "Yeah, but like, you know, I saw the car coming. I wasn't gonna die. It was fine, whatever." And then she like accidentally like invites her, or like she talks her way into inviting herself to this wedding that they're going to, which is another wedding. Like the episode starts watching their wedding, and then the rest of the episode is at somebody else's wedding. I don't. Like, why did we need to watch them get married, or why not just make this their marriage, make it even sadder? You know, it's
The weird thing about the wedding is they're also breaking the timeline as well, because obviously we weren't at the wedding in the first place, so now we're at the wedding, and that's taking up 2 extra seats. So what happened to the 2 people who might have needed those seats? Because you know.
Yeah, the laws in this episode just don't exist. This scene does end in a really funny bit though, where he's like, "Do you and your boyfriend need a lift?" And then we hard cut to Christopher Eccleston staring absolute daggers into Rose, like he looks like he's gonna kill her.
But yeah, this is also when we meet Pete, who's more like a Del Boy character, who Rose quite rightly describes him as later. Pete is inspired by Paul Cornell's dad. When he was a child, his dad would read Doctor Who novelizations to him, so he has a tight relationship with his dad. This is Paul Cornell speaking. Pete is based somewhat on my dad, who rented a shop front and ran a laundrette, a bookmaker's, and an insurance business from it. In the end, his dad found success in selling solar panels, so he was a man of like multiple trades, basically. This episode was going to cast Simon Pegg as Rose's dad, but Simon Pegg was busy filming. God, what was the 2005? The 2005 Day of the Dead movie, not the one directed by Zack Snyder and written by James Gunn, but Land of the Dead, I think it was called, which was a George A. Romero movie. I think it was like the 4th one of the Dead franchise. And he had a cameo with Edgar Wright as 2 zombies, because obviously they just did Shaun of the Dead, and George A. Romero loved the movie, and he was like, why not cameo in my next movie as 2 zombies? So Simon Pegg was busy in Canada filming that movie for a day or 2.
Oh, that's fun. I didn't know that.
Obviously Simon Pegg asked to do the editor instead, which was the previous episode, so he did end up in Doctor Who after all.
Which is great. I'm glad Simon Pegg is in Doctor Who, but I kind of wish he was Rose's dad, simply because that means he would have come back for the other, the other seasons and the other stories, and we could have got more Simon Pegg in Doctor Who, whereas instead we've just got the 1 episode, and it's, it's like a whatever episode.
The Cyberman 2-parter is kind of like a sequel to this episode in a way, because the entire plot, Rose's entire plot is, oh my god, my dad's alive, I can go visit him. And then they sneak their way into the mansion and find out that Rose was a dog on this version of Earth.
Yeah, they're in a different universe, and it's all weird. And it's like, if they didn't have a kid, then her dad would have lived, or something. Like, but in the episode, they go back into Rose's dad's flat, which is, of course, the same flat that Rose grew up in and that Jackie still lives in to this day, but it's a bit more of a mess. There's all these bits and bobs all over the place, and the Doctor and Rose get into a bit of a spat, which it's this spat is awkward, because this is where they bring up the point where it's like, oh, but Doctor, you just know who to save, and he's like, yeah, I know who I can save and who I can't save, because I'm super clever and super cool and smart, and the Doctor, and it's really hard to sympathize with anybody in this argument, because they're both wrong and they're both idiots.
Yeah, again, just the Doctor letting Rose do this is really weird and just out of character, but he does bring up the point of him saying, you don't think I would have done the same thing? I would have gone back to my home planet and saved people. Which
But
he,
it's like,
which he
should-
kind of
should you
later
not-
does.
Yeah, he does do that, but it's also like, should you not be having this conversation before you go back in time with
Yeah.
Rose to save her dad? Should you not talk to her about the importance of not interfering with your own timeline and the importance of not stopping somebody in your own timeline dying, and why you know personally firsthand because your entire planet and family are dead, or at least you think they're dead at this point. So you should be able to be like, hey Rose, bad idea.
Yeah, take Rose to a projection room inside of a TARDIS and show her a PSA film about the dangers of time travel, hosted by Troy McClure.
I would love that. I would watch that.
But in this scene in the original draft, Pete Tyler would have found out that Rose is his child. I prefer it being left until like the third act because it's way too soon for him to make the connection. At the end of this scene, he's like, "You look kind of familiar," which is, I'm glad they touch on the fact that Pete catches on that he's Rose is his daughter, because in Back to the Future, a big pet peeve of mine is that George and Lorraine never figure out that Martin McFly is their child.
Yeah, it's I like it. As I also like that he figures it out by himself, pretty much. Where he's like, "Wait, I gave you the keys to my car. You look similar. You've got the same attitude as Jackie. Like, you're my daughter, aren't you?" Like, he's a smart enough character with enough agency that he can put two and two together and figure out this very obvious puzzle himself. Even he's like, "Wait, you called me Dad. How did I not see this?"
In Back to the Future, Martin McFly almost calls George Dad, but instead he changed it to Daddy-O. Nobody in Back to the Future figures it out, which is a perfect movie, but it always annoys me that there's never a conversation 15 years later where George and Lorraine are like, "Hey, Lorraine, my son kind of looks like that guy you almost had sex with in the car. What's going on here?"
But the episode then continues as the Doctor storms out saying that, "Bye forever, Rose, I'm just going to leave you here," as some weird spooky red eyes are following him down the street, and then they just kill 3 random people, and every single person that they kill drops an item, so you know that they're dead. That's the, if you die and you're not holding something, do you really die?
Yeah. It's the best way of killing off people without needing to make it too dark, I guess. It's implied rather than what you see, because
it's left up to your imagination to fill in the blanks of what happened to them. But there's also the next scene we get is really kind of strange and a bit gross, where Rose's dad's like, "Oh, your boyfriend stormed out. He doesn't know what he's missing because you're super hot." And Rose is like, "Shut up, please shut up. Stop talking to me right now. This is really inappropriate." Which is cool. I'm glad that Rose shut it down immediately. But also, you could just have him not be sexual towards his daughter, that would have worked just as well. But I guess it establishes that he's a bit of a sleazebag as a dude,
Yeah.
That's the point they get into, and the point of the next argument is that he's this gross dude that just fools around behind his wife's back.
For some reason, I'm fine with it in Back to the Future when Marty McFly's mom in the past starts flirting with him.
I don't like it in Back to the Future either.
I mean, it's more funny. It's not as disturbing in that movie. But, here it's more disturbing because I guess it's the man making the advances.
I don't know. It's also the age gap.
Yeah.
Because in Back to the Future, his mom's a teenager, and he's a teenager as well. Whereas in this, he's a 40-year-old dude, and Rose is 19.
Yeah. But yeah, I do like it because it's the first scene where we get the indication of this isn't the person that Jackie was talking about. Jackie kind of embellished the truth in some ways.
It was rose-tinted glasses for Jackie when she was describing what the dad was like.
Nice pun.
Oh my God! Yeah, I did that on purpose. That's something I did on purpose for sure. We then cut to a scene at the wedding where they're like, "Wow, not a lot of people are at this wedding. That sure is strange, but it saves a lot of money on hiring extras, I guess." But the weird thing about the scene for me is the the groom's dad character, he's a douchebag. He's a total, like, terrible dude. He's like, you don't have to get married, by the way, son. You know, you can just fool around a bit if you like, and no one's gonna blame you if you call off the wedding. I don't like him. Don't like him as a character.
Oh
I
yeah,
think he sucks.
it's because this is a scene where it's indicated that they're getting married because basically the wife is pregnant, and in the 80s it was still kind of frowned upon to have a baby outside of marriage. Obviously, it was legal at that point. It wasn't as frowned upon as in the past, but this is the start where society starts changing their minds. But yeah.
We then cut to the Doctor, who's finally made it back to the TARDIS. He parked it so far away from where they were. He's been walking for ages. But he gets to the TARDIS and he opens up the doors, and oh my god, they forgot to add the special effects. It's just a blue box. What is going on? He's very confused by it. I really like it. Sometimes it's fun to see behind the curtain and see just the set, where it's like, this is just the actual TARDIS. This is the set we bring out, like the little model we bring out onto set. When we're using the exterior scenes, you can see what it looks like inside. It's very fun. Usually it's just a green screen in there. But I think it works. It's very effective in being like, oh crap, what happened to the TARDIS? You know?
Yeah. And as a kid, it was like, holy shit, what's going on here?
Yeah. And then we cut to a hilarious scene where Rose is driving in the car with her dad, and she's like, I thought you were like a cool business guy, and stuff like that. And turns out you're like a total dork. And then she like pulls out her mobile phone. Which blows his mind, blows her dad's mind completely. Where he's like, "Is that a phone?" And she's like, she doesn't even like address it. She's just like, "Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's a phone." And he never brings it up again either. Like they run past it really quickly.
His reaction to the phone being blown away was the same reaction I had. The next scene where we see a 1980s phone, which is like a big brick,
Yeah.
Like I was like, holy shit, is that what a phone looked like in the 80s? What the fuck? I mean, obviously now we have smartphones. They look so much more different. It's wild how times change. I mean, of course, inside of the car, they're listening to Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, which was a popular song in the 80s, but it became even more popular like a year after this episode aired, when it became a massive meme. It's still a fucking meme. Like... The second resurgence of this song was massive.
I think it was even later that the meme actually came about, because there's an episode of Always Sunny, which also started in 2005. It's either season 1 or season 2, so it's 2005 or 2006, where they're listening to the Rick Astley Never Gonna Give You Up, unironically, like not as a meme, as a like, haha, got you. Like they're just listening to it because Dennis really likes the song, as he's driving. And they talked about it on the Sunny podcast, where like, were we one of the first accidental Rick rolls? Like,
so Rick Rowland began to rise between April and May 2007. So 2 years after this episode, it became a huge meme. Which
crazy. It's still a meme. It's one of the longest lasting memes, I think.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday as a meme. I was on Twitter, the dreaded Twitter. And the thing is, nowadays you can upload 2-hour-long videos, and people have been using this as an
I think you just upload the Mario movie.
To upload the Mario movie. And yesterday I saw a post saying, fuck it, I'll just upload the entire new Spider-Verse movie. And I clicked on the video, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be the actual Spider-Verse movie. It was a 2-hour-long video of just Rickroll.
Amazing. God, I like deleting my Twitter is the best decision I've ever made. I'm so happy that it's gone.
When the song became popular on YouTube, like millions of YouTube videos were just Rick rolls. Rick Astley was taking a 10-year hiatus of music. He wasn't released any music or anything, and he was kind of hesitant to return to music because he was basically a joke around this time. But then somebody pointed out to him, like, you're getting millions and millions of views on YouTube. Might as well just make a comeback. And then, like, the next year, he did a Thanksgiving Day parade and just sang Never Gonna Give You Up with the Cartoon Network show Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Like, it was a parade float for Foster's Home. And he appeared in that float and sang Never Gonna Give You Up, and it was massive. Like, he owned the meme, and he's still popular to this day. You know, he's still releasing
he still
new
pops
music.
up. He still pops up every now and then in places. It's like, oh crap, that's Rick Astley. What's he doing?
You know, if the point of the meme is this song is terrible, but I like this song. It's a good song. It's well written.
It's a bop. Yeah, it's a bop. But the thing I wanted to mention about this mobile phone scene is kind of the sad part of technology is the difference between phones in 1987 2005 is massive. Difference between 2005 and 2023, massive difference in phone, right? But the difference between 2005 and 2010, huge difference. The difference between 2010 and 2023, almost no difference.
Yeah.
The only difference now is our screens are bigger and the touchscreen works better. So I'm really curious in 18 years time from now, in 2037 or whatever year, that's just a guess. It could be what, 2040? God, I have to do maths. 2041? Is that 18 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2041. Are phones just gonna be the same still? Are they gonna be touchscreeny phones, or are they gonna be just like what Musk wants, little chip in a brain? Are we even gonna use phones? Like, what we got? Is it a Google Glass gonna make a big comeback?
Yeah, we need to come back to this episode in 18 years.
In 18 years.
Even if the podcast is over, we need to return and just have the
Yeah.
same discussion again, because that would be interesting. But of course, this is the scene where Rose is trying to call the doctor, and she keeps getting the message, "Watson, come here, I want you," or "I need you." And this was the first ever phone call from the 10th of March, 1876 by Alexander Graham Bell. So big time disturbances are happening, and also Rick Astley keeps getting interrupted by then modern rap music.
Yep. We then also get cut to the wedding, or like outside the church, where the bride comes up and they're like, oh, nobody's here, but things are going wrong. We see Jackie, we see baby Rose, and then as adult Rose and her dad are about to pull up, they almost get completely knocked out in a big car crash by the dude that almost ran over the dad beforehand that Rose saved her from, and we see this guy in the car, like, he just continuously vanishes, and the entire episode he's like driving in this loop, and like, what a nightmare existence that guy must be having right now. Like, he's just stuck driving and driving and driving and driving in a Groundhog Day scenario where he's just has to loop this block forever until he manslaughters somebody, you know?
Yeah, he's a true victim of his story, not Rose, not Pete, him.
Yeah, for sure.
Nightmare.
Absolutely terrible. And speaking of terrible, we then get to see Jackie and the dad, what's the dad's name?
Pete.
Jackie and Pete, yeah. Jackie and Pete together for the first time properly since their wedding that we watched for whatever reason. And Rose is like, oh, yay, mom and dad are together. This will be nice. You two love each other, right? Wrong. They have a huge argument in front of everybody at this wedding, in front of the church, about Pete fooling around, and that she thinks that he's fooling around with Rose, and there's all this sort of shenanigans going on. And the entire time, Rose is being like a total creep, because she's a bit awestruck the fact that she's, like, you know, in front of her mom and her hair looks different, and that's a baby version of her, and so she's just saying stuff that makes her sound like insane, which just causes further like conflict between the two of them. And there's this, they continue to spat and argue, and eventually, like, she storms off. She's got this brutal line where she's like, if you're not careful, there'll be a wedding and a divorce in one day. It's like, Christ, what a way, like, you're at someone else's wedding right now. What is going on?
It's because Jackie is making the conclusion that this is Pete's new
He brought a date.
he brought a date, basically. This is Pete's new toy, essentially. Because there was an incident, I can't remember, was it on a plane, and there was like a storage room, and apparently
it was at like the cloakroom of some of like a club or something, like.
So he basically had sex in a cloakroom and makes up the excuse that Jacket somehow covered them both, and it was a big old
everything fell on top of
misunderstanding.
them, and they were
not a great first impression for meeting your dad for the first time.
No, not very good at all. The episode continues as we then cut to a play park that's definitely from 1987 and not from 2005 at all. I don't know why you would think it's from 2005, even though it's got all the same play equipment that 2005 play parks had. They kept that play equipment for 18 years. They never updated it, which is pretty much feels true because I appreciate you would go to a park now. They would have the same stuff that they
I
have.
go to my fucking local park and everything fucking looks the same as it did when I was a kid in 1980.
When you were a kid in 1987.
Yeah, in 2005, 18 years ago, yeah. What did a play park look like in 1987? I presume it was all the same shit, right?
It would have been the same stuff, except instead of the wooden, like what's the like stuff they have on the ground at play parks, the like
Grass?
wooden chopped up bits. No, like if you go to like a park with like swings and stuff, it's got like wooden, like bits of wood everywhere on the floor. I'm forgetting the word for it.
Trees?
It's like oh, yeah, no, like it's not like on grass. Like you see it here, or it's this park in grass. I can't tell. But at least where I am, anyway. Like kids' parks have got like this soft, like mushy wood everywhere to like supposedly make the ground softer for you. And I think the main difference between play parks now and play parks in 1987 is they wouldn't have that wood. They would just have concrete that's got like knives sticking out of it every now and then because health and safety wasn't a thing. And they were like, fuck it, whatever. But yeah, no, the park looks like every park I've ever been to as a kid. The little
I just
bird
googled
rocking
UK
back
play
and forth
park.
thing.
I just googled UK play park 1987. I'm getting no results. It looks anything like a.
Well, you're on a list though. You've been-
Yeah, everything is from the modern era, which it confuses me because that's
Yeah.
not what I googled. But okay.
maybe they didn't have play parks in 1987. But the little like red bird rocking thing, I don't know what it's called either. God, it's been so long since I've been to a park.
We should go together tomorrow.
No, yeah, you're already on a list. I don't want to be on a list with you. But like that's like straight out of childhood. That thing, that red bird design specifically, that's in every park in the UK ever. Like,
Yeah, you're right. Everything does look like 2005. I imagine we wouldn't have like that. Well, we would have a seesaw, but not like the seesaw that kind of bounces.
Seesaw,
You
that's
know
the
what I
word.
mean?
yeah, and like it's just the specific design of stuff as well. Like
Yeah.
that bird design, like that specific bird design is straight out of my childhood. Like, and they could have had it for 18 years before. I would have no idea. I remember that in parks from being a kid. You know?
I also remember all my parents disappearing in the park, getting eaten by vulture people. But somehow, I don't think Mickey sees vulture people. It's weird. Mickey doesn't see the Reapers. He just kind of notices his mum disappearing. You know what I mean? Like his mum isn't there in the next shot, so I presume his mum was
Like
eaten.
he screams about monsters.
Yeah.
And why would he scream about monsters if he doesn't see?
He doesn't really
monster?
react to his mum being eaten. It's weird.
Yeah, but he runs away from the park being like, oh my god, monsters. And then this like total like douchebag of a lady's like, oh, monsters, is it aliens? And then like 3 adults laugh at him. Like, what sort of adult are you that you're like a kid is running scared saying there's a monster and you're like, haha, aliens. What an idiot.
I mean,
Like,
I laugh at kids all the time doing stupid stuff.
yeah,
so.
but you know, a kid that looks genuinely terrified running for his goddamn life, you know, what are you gonna do? Douchebag at a wedding as well. What a douche. But the episode then continues on as we see Jackie and oh my god, Pete.
Yes.
Yes.
Pete.
Make up a bit from their argument, and then everybody's getting ready to go into the wedding until, of course, big monster makes itself seen. Big CGI bat that's just starts murdering people left and right for like no reason. Like they just start munching on people, and there's one of them that's going to kill the bride, but then it's like, nah, I'm going to kill this priest instead. Yeah. Like they just kill people. What do you think about the design of this creature?
Yeah, the design kind of looks generic, but yeah, they kind of went for like an overall fish look. They kind of went for like a shark kind of look with bat wings and a praying mantis mouth, and the tail was in the shape of like a sai, like a Grim Reaper sai. And that's what we kind of based their design on. It looks decent enough, but it's kind of like...
It's generic monster.
Yeah.
It's generic.
It looks decent, though. It doesn't look bad.
No, the CGI for it looks decent, and it's a decent little monster design. It's just... like not the most memorable monster. It's like it's just straight up. It's like, okay, it's just as a monster of the week doing monster stuff.
Yeah, obviously the original concept was there wouldn't be any monsters, but Paul Cornell didn't like the idea of a monsterless episode because Doctor Who is all about monsters. Julie Gardner kind of agreed with him, and Davis suggested the monster could be caused by Rose changing time. And he had the groveling creature from Dead Like Me in mind. Do you know what Dead Like Me is?
Not a clue.
So Dead Like Me is a series about Grim Reapers. They don't kill people in this show. Instead, people are killed by these little gremlin creatures called grovelins. And they kill people by setting up like Rube Goldberg kind of like scenarios.
Right.
And... So yeah, that's what it's based on. Big little gremlin dudes from Dead Like Me. Have you looked up a picture?
I'm looking up Dead Like Me right now. I'm seeing a poster with Death blowing some bubble gum.
Gravelins. 2 seconds. I'll show you a picture of the creatures from Dead Like Me.
Graveling. Oh, okay. Little CGI goblin man.
Yeah. So that's the creatures who kind of like set up Rube Goldberg machines to kill people, basically.
Interesting. That's a fun, I guess, idea for a show.
The show is created by Brian Fuller, who would go on to create Hannibal and other shows. He left the show quite early on, so the show never really reaches its full potential because he gets fired by like episode 4 or something.
Okay.
The show itself was fine. It's kind of quirky, but I liked the show as a kid.
It's got some dated special effects for sure.
But yeah, the mill wanted the creatures to be like a practical effect, kind of like Muppet, kind of like a puppet. But Russell Davis was against this because it wouldn't look good in broad daylight, which is obviously when this episode is set. So he asked him to do a CGI creation instead, and the CGI looks really solid for 2005. Nothing looked like this in 2005 British television. The CGI is really impressive.
Yeah, and it's held up. It stood the test of time. 18 years later, it's not distractingly bad.
Although I kind of go back and forth from this. I kind of like the idea of it not being a monsterless, not having a monster in this episode. I think that would be more impactful in the end.
But what's the plot if there's no monster? Like, what goes wrong?
Yeah, true.
Because she just saves her dad, and then it's like, oh, okay, you did it. Nice.
I mean, what goes wrong would have been time getting fucked up and, like, Celtic warriors coming in and whatever.
Yeah, but then at that point, like, you might as well throw a monster in there.
Yeah.
But it's fun enough. But everybody runs into the church, and then the doctor closes the door, and he's like, it's okay. They can't get in because the church is old.
Yeah, I don't understand that part.
Which I guess is a reason for them not to get... It's literally just some plot armor so that we can have characters not be instantly killed.
I do wonder if the original reason might have been because it's a religious place and kind of, the whole vampire thing. Vampires can't come into religious places because it burns them or whatever. And then maybe it got changed in the plot because... alluding to religion in a kids program is weird, so we kind of made up a fake reason for it, but
is alluding to religion in a kids program weird because in like a season's time the doctor's going to fight the devil?
I guess. I guess.
But then the doctor gets into a spat with Jackie where she's like, what's going on? Who are you? And he's like, I'm the doctor. God, I knew you'd argue with me. Right, now you've got to do... I've been wanting to say this to you since I ever met you. Jackie Tyler, do as I say. go and check those doors, which I'm like, that's a really weird thing to really want to say to Jackie Tyler.
I
Like,
think
really...
I think he just means do as I say. That's what he wanted.
Yeah, that's obviously what he means, but it's just
Listen
as
to
a complete set. Yeah, listen to me. Go check those doors. Like, that's a strange wish you've got there, Doctor. But in the meantime, he also answers the question about the Alexander Graham Bell telephone call, and says that no one's going to come and help us. We're basically trapped in here, and it starts feeling a bit horror-esque as we cut to like shots outside the church, and there's like the pram lying on the middle of the road, and the car crashed, and it almost gives zombie movie vibes,
Yeah, just everyone's gone, and all that's left are like a kid's shoe or whatever.
Yeah, and you're just left in this like empty world where the last survivors are held up in a church with the monsters outside. Like, it's a pretty dark but fun little concept.
Yeah.
We then go on to have a very nice little scene with Rose and Pete.
Actually, before that, the Doctor runs up to a window in the room where Pete is, and they both see the car kind of disappear. And I think this is the moment where Pete's like, that kind of looks like the car that was supposed to hit me, and it just disappeared. What's going on here?
Yeah. Where he's like, oh no, things aren't right, and it's got something to do with me, doesn't it? As he goes off to see Rose, and he's like, hey Rose, weird question, you're my daughter, right? And he basically puts two and two together, figures everything out, and they have a very nice little hug. It's a very, very sweet scene, I think.
It gets to me because Rose is kind of just standing there trying to hold back tears, and he's making the connections himself. Rose isn't blurting out that I'm your daughter, which would have been a stupid thing to do because the Doctor just told Rose not to mess with time, but it's a smart decision that Pete makes. Pete connects the two dots himself because, otherwise he's kind of a dumb character in this show, but he's not overly dumb. He makes a connection because it's a simple connection to make. Time's going wrong. You kind of look like Jackie. You called me dad earlier. He's not dumb.
Yeah, he manages to figure it out. And while that's going on, we get another very nice scene where the bride and groom come up to the Doctor and they're like, please, can you save us from this? Which, following the Doctor's own logic here from what he gave to Rose, no, he can't save them because if they're supposed to die right now from these big monsters, he's just going to have to let that happen.
Well, this wasn't supposed to happen in the first place.
True, so. That's true. But how does he know that these two weren't supposed to be killed by monsters any other given time? But he learns a bit more about them. He learns how they got together, and they met at like a club and ended up going on a date, and it's this very cute little scene, and he's like, well, I'll do my best to try and save you then. And it's just this nice little bit of showing the empathy of the Doctor and why he likes humanity so much, because remember, this is season 1 of Doctor Who. We're still learning who the Doctor is. We're still trying to figure out why he does the things that he does and what motivates him and stuff like that, and I really like this little scene.
Yeah, and this is the scene where the Doctor's like, the couple are like, yeah, this isn't an important story. We're not important people, but can you save us? And the Doctor's like, who said you were not important? Of course you're important. The two of you meeting at 2:00 and outside of a bar, that's important. I wish I had that life, which kind of adds to the loneliness of the Doctor's life, And also he would do anything to save these two non-important people, which again, was to say that we weren't going to die in this scenario in the first place.
Then little baby Mickey Smith comes over as Rose is having a continued heart-to-heart with her dad, like just learning about his life and stuff like that, and he's asking questions, and Rose is trying to avoid saying that you're straight up dead, pal. And he's like, have you got a boyfriend or anything like that? And then we hear Mickey from the distance as little child Mickey comes up and hugs Rose, which is this fun, like, haha, that's so cute that's her boyfriend in season 1, and he's like hugging her now.
Yeah.
Like the Mickey character is a character I think they never figured out.
Yeah.
Because he goes from being Rose's boyfriend to not Rose's boyfriend to kind of Rose's boyfriend to not Rose's boyfriend again to suddenly Martha's boyfriend. Like he's just and also like at one point he was living in another dimension fighting Cybermen.
Let's forget about that.
with his boyfriend.
And also, you know, at the beginning of the season, Rose straight up leaves him, just crying there alone, because the doctor comes back and is like, yeah, I can travel in time. You want to come with? And we kind of skipped over the conversation.
Rose treats him like shit.
Yeah, Rose treats him like shit. And that reminds me, we kind of skipped over the part in Pete's flat where the doctor's like, when I came back and I said, I can also go through time, because when he said this is a spaceship and I could go through space, Rose didn't want to go for the doctor, but when he said it's a time machine, Rose literally ran and left Mickey behind to go travel through time. And the doctor's like, did you decide to come with me to save your dad? And Rose is like, no, it was kind of like a spur of the moment kind of thing. I didn't make this conscious decision to do this. And this is kind of this was a conversation. Yeah, exactly. This is a conversation that Paul Cornell and Russell T. Davies had. Did Rose have this in mind the entire time, or was it a spur of the moment? I think it was a spur of the moment kind of thing. It was a thing that she did in just emotion alone. It wasn't a decision she made before this.
I don't know. I don't know if it was like a malicious intent, but I think like, oh, I can travel in time, and she goes, oh, okay, I'm coming then, because she at least some part of her, even in the back of her mind, is like, I could see my dad again. But like, because like, you know, it could travel anywhere in space, I could show you countless worlds. She's like, nah, pal, it could take you to 1987. I'm in. Like, what sort of brain is that? Who doesn't want to see alien worlds and who wants to see 1987? Somebody with an ulterior motive. That's who.
Good point. That's a good point. Yeah. But the idea of a time machine is more interesting than just a space machine, you know.
Yeah, sure, a time machine is more interesting. But if an alien man comes to you and says, "I have a spaceship, would you like to come with me?" Are you gonna go, "Nah, it's not a time machine. I'm not interested." Like,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting thing to bring up, though, because, you know, maybe she did do it. You know, does that make her ill intent if she did want to save her dad? I don't think so, because, you know, it's something that I would have wanted to do when I was watching this show, you know.
Yeah, I always read it as she specifically wanted the time travel part, and that's why she ran, and why this episode is such a thing, because she wanted that to travel back to see her dad. And, you know, you get character growth where on the journey with it, she realizes, like, oh crap, the universe is so much bigger than I could have thought. You know, there's so much more outside of myself. And I was being this selfish weirdo beforehand. And I want to have sex with you, Doctor, now. But that's like the arc that I see Rose kind of going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I always read it as she was being a bit of a
fucking what's the episode where she goes back in time, and the Charles Dickens episode when Gwyneth kind of reads Rose's mind, and she makes a connection that she's been thinking of her dad quite recently. So maybe it was intentional.
Well, yeah.
So I think that settles it, because when we did what the fuck was the episode called? The Unquiet Dead, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we did The Unquiet Dead, when we reviewed the episode, I read that as the Doctor and Rose kind of like being father and daughter figures. That's the intention of what Russell T. Davies wanted from the start, you know, rather than the whole boyfriend scenario. But rereading that scene, I now think he had the idea all along that Rose wanted to travel in time to save her dad, or at least see her dad at some point.
Yeah, I think the only reason they don't straight up confirm that is what Rose's intention was is it makes her like slightly unlikable
Yes, yeah.
because she's manipulating the Doctor at that point, you know.
I mean, obviously, the next situation where she could see her dad was in The Age of Steel, the Cyberman two-parter in Series 2, and her first thought in this new world, in an alternative world, is, I can go see my dad. My dad's alive. I could go see him. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, one-track mind. Like,
But yeah, I'm glad the show left it ambiguous because, you know, that's one way to make a character extremely unlikable is if she had this motive the entire time.
yeah, just to take advantage of the Doctor, and you know, go back and mess up her own timeline. Mm-hmm. It would make her unlikable, and it would also make her like, how does that make her different from Adam, who went to the future and was like, I'm just going to do my own thing and get brain surgery for no reason. Like, you know, just taking advantage of the Doctor's generosity.
Yeah, and it was smart for Russell to place this episode straight after the Adam two-parter, essentially, because we've seen what a selfish companion is, and Rose isn't a selfish companion. She is just somebody who does this because it's just based on pure human emotion, really, and that doesn't make her selfish. The Doctor would have done the same thing if he could save the Gallifreyans, you know, the Time Lords.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he does do the same thing.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he does the same thing at the end of the Fires of Pompeii when he saves Peter Capaldi and then chooses his face several years later.
Yes. It's messy, but we get a little fun scene with the Doctor and baby Rose, who he's been left in control of, and he's like, "Now, Rose, you're not going to bring about the end of the world, are you?" Which it just makes me laugh that he's trying to implant this message into baby Rose. But it does bring up a very important question, actually. Can Christopher Ecclestone's Doctor speak baby like Matt Smith's Doctor can?
Probably, to be honest, maybe. I thought you were going to ask a question. Does Baby Rose remember this moment? Which would
No, of course not. It's a baby.
Yeah, but when we did the Curse of Fenric, which was the episode where Ace meets her mother as a baby, I think the story was in expanded media. Because at the end of that story, sorry, this is a tangent, but at the end of the story, the Doctor kind of manipulates Ace in that moment of where he's like, I never believed in you. You're just a streetwise kid, and I never trusted you, whatever. And then in expanded media, the Seventh Doctor goes back in time to when Ace was a kid and apologizes to a baby Ace about what he did in that moment. So I don't know if Ace remembers that moment or whatever, but the Doctor does have these weird things with his companions as a baby.
Yeah, that is strange. What else is strange is the baby that we're looking at is now like 19 years old, probably, if not 20.
The same age as Rose is in this episode.
Yeah.
But Rose runs up and the Doctor warns her not to touch the baby, which is a callback to Modern Undead, where there's two brigadiers and the Doctor warns him not to touch himself, not in a sexual way, of course, but in like a like a normal person way, because two brigadiers from two different timelines would cause a rift in a space-time continuum. Terrence Dix coined this as the Blinovich limitation effect. Basically, you can't go back in time and correct your mistakes, and this is what the episode is kind of based on, the Blinovich limitation effect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like time travel is problematic. Because you know, it causes so many paradoxes that it becomes really hard to make sense of. And the like,
to be fair,
even in this scene, the Doctor is like, we're pretty much doomed. There's nothing we can do. There used to be people that could stop this happening, like my people. You would be able to stop this happening, but they're all gone now. It's like, but they all have time machines. Could they not have, like, they could just see this happening and be like, oh, let's stop this. And you're like, how are you here, Time Lords? You're all dead. It's like, well, we're the Time Lords before we all died because time isn't linear, because we have have time machines. So even if we are dead at this point, we're not dead before then, and we can travel after that point because we have a time machine like you do, Doctor. I don't know why you're so confused by the concept of time travel. But they explain away the Time Lords not being accessed because the Time War is in a time bubble or something, which also makes no sense. Which also makes no sense because what about the Time Lords that are before the Time War happens? So they're not in a time bubble. They have time machines. Surely they could just be able to travel to the year 1987. Which I'm almost certain that there have been Time Lords in 1987 on Earth because of Doctor Who.
It gets totally complicated, but I think the thing is, the Time Lords are always linear to the Doctor's timeline. So the Ninth Doctor can never meet the Time Lords because they are destroyed at this point. They can't interact with each other because of the Time Lords being linear to the timeline of the Doctor, which is confusing. But that's why when the 10th Doctor encounters the Time Lords, it's because it's the final moments of Gallifrey before it gets destroyed. It's complicated, but the way they explain it makes it less complicated.
I guess there's an internal logic with that, with all Time Lords experiencing time linearly with each other.
Yeah. Except I don't think it applies to the Master, but it's chronological with most Time Lords because otherwise, what happens if the Doctor says something that happens in 2 years and he creates like a big Gallifrey time mishap or whatever,
Yeah, it's time travel doesn't make sense, and it doubly doesn't make sense in Doctor Who.
To be fair, for a TV show about time travel, Doctor Who isn't that confusing compared to
they keep it
like most other shows about time travel would have fucked up way more than Doctor Who. Doctor Who is kind of smart in how it plays its time travel rules.
But that's because it plays its time travel rules fast and loose. Yeah. It's got vague sort of rules, but it never firmly says this is 100% what's going to happen. Which is one of the reasons why this episode's time travel rules don't make sense, is because in this episode they say 100% this happens when this happens in time travel. This can only 100% happen because of time travel, which is where this episode falls short. Where other episodes it's like timey-wimey, time travel is confusing, don't worry about it. Go back to the episode The End of Time, where David Tennant regenerates, and he's trying to explain some concept to Wilf, and he's like, picture a bubble. It's not a bubble, but just picture a bubble. It's fine, whatever. He's like, it's fast and loose with the rules, where it doesn't quite make sense, but it gives you enough of an explanation you understand what's going on. Whereas the rules that they establish in this episode just straight up don't make sense.
I'm beginning to think making a show about time travel is the worst thing they could have done, because it's incredibly fucking confusing. Why doesn't anybody in and what's it? Fear Her, the episode where the little kid draws. The little kid traps people in drawings. It's set in 2012, episode. But nobody in this episode remembers the events of what happened in most of the Matt Smith era at this point.
But that's just, it's the cracks in time. Have something to Doctor Who canon is whatever, you don't worry about it. Time travel is whatever, don't worry about it.
That's why I think Doctor Who should try and avoid episodes set in 2030, because it's not that far away. Yeah, and when we watch an episode set in when we watch an episode made in 2030, it's gonna fuck up everything. So.
One of these days there's bound to already be stuff where they've said this happens in the 2020s, and it's just the whole the
Dalek invasion of Earth is supposed to take place in 2010 or something.
But it's fun. But the Doctor and Rose hug, and then she's like, "Oh my God, Doctor, are you catching fire, or are you just happy to see me?" As the key to the TARDIS begins glowing like it's regenerating, and the Doctor picks it up, and he's like, "We need to get a battery on this thing to supercharge it." Groom is like, "Hey, my dead dad's giant mobile phone has a big battery. Do you want to use that?" He's like, "Yeah, cool." Sonics it up a bit. So
the TARDIS key works with a battery and a sonic screwdriver. It doesn't make any sense. I'm confused.
It works because of magic.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what the sonic
you know,
screwdriver is in the new series, just magic.
it's a magic fix-it device. You just you press the button, it fixes the problem that you've got. After that, are we caught up, or is there another scene?
And also, it's very strange to see Christopher Ecclestone without his jacket, because he's basically just got like a green jumper on. It's really weird.
He does, but I kind of like it. Like, I
Yeah.
think it kind of suits, like, the leather jacket all the time is like whatever, but it's like a really baggy leather jacket because he's a skinny guy. Whereas the green jumper is a bit more form fitting, and he is like, oh, nice, like you actually are not like dying.
Have you seen pictures of one of his initial screen tests for Doctor Who?
Probably.
Because he is wearing a turtleneck in some of these photos.
Oh, I've
Oh,
not seen it then. That doesn't sound
Give me a
familiar.
second. He's straight up
Oh,
just
that
wearing a turtleneck.
You know what? It suits him though. I dig
Yeah.
it. Turtleneck and leather jacket. That's a good Doctor look.
And I think the last Ninth Doctor box set uses this image because obviously we only have so many images.
So many
of,
images, yeah.
Christopher Ecclestone. So, and also there's one of him. I'll show you the next one I've found. Again, just a very interesting outfit for a Ninth
like
Doctor.
Victorian. Yeah. That would be fun, although the Victorian like get-up's a bit too close to the Eighth Doctor in terms of style. But like I wouldn't mind him dressing up like that for the what's his name? What's the episode set in Victorian times with the writer guy? What's he called? The guy that likes to write.
Charles Dickens.
He writes a lot.
I
Charles
just mentioned
Dickens,
him
yeah.
like 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the episode continues as Rose is having more of a conversation with her dad, and he's like, you know, what type of dad was I? Am I a good dad? It's a continuation of the conversation they've been having for basically the last half of this episode. And she's coming up with this story where she's like, oh, you used to take us on picnics all the time, and you know, we used to hang out all together and have a great time. And you can kind of see in his performance where he's like, that doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, and also everything that Rose is saying is incredibly generic. It's like, oh yeah, you used to read to me before bed, and you used to drive a car, you used to brush your teeth.
Yeah, and while that's going on, the TARDIS starts to reappear as the TARDIS key has been jiggered into working and getting the TARDIS in, and the Doctor's like, everyone's going to live, everything's going to be super cool, don't worry about a thing, it's going to be super cool, and he then tells Rose that no one's going to remember what happened because of plot conveniences, you know, because time is being all timey, and that means that everyone's going to get all forgetty. Because when time gets timey, people get forgetty. That is the rule established in Doctor Who.
And then they all go get spaghetti.
Yeah,
They just all decide to go out and get spaghetti, you know? I like
it's like the end of
spaghetti.
Avengers when they get shawarma. At the end of this one, they just go out and they get spaghetti.
You know, quality spaghetti at the wedding, you know? I can never go to a wedding without spaghetti.
Do you go to a lot of weddings?
Yeah, when they have spaghetti, yeah.
We then get a very fun scene where Jackie overhears them talking about Rose being Pete's daughter, and she's like, what do you mean she's your daughter? How old were you, 12? That's disgusting. And you called her Rose, you sick freak. Which is funny. It's also like a weird way to look at what she suspects to be child abuse. If you got somebody pregnant at 12, why is that his fault? Why is he the one that's gross? Jackie, get yourself sorted out. You've got your whole thinking wrong. But then, you know, they start having into another argument, and he's like, no, look, she's Rose, she's our Rose, look, Rose, take the baby, which is literally 5 minutes ago the Doctor was like, you can't touch the baby or everything will be wrong.
Any other show would have had a flashback to the Doctor saying, don't touch a baby when she was taking the baby, you know. And Rose is like, Rose isn't like, oh, don't keep the baby away from me. Rose is like, yeah, I'll see the baby.
Oh yeah, give me that.
Give
me
me
the baby.
Give me the baby.
Yeah, I'll hold
apparently Billy Piper was afraid to take the baby because, you know, the babies are terrifying to carry, you know, they're so fragile.
Oh yeah, you're constantly like, I'm gonna drop it, I'm gonna drop it, I'm gonna drop it. Yeah, I understand that fear, but Yeah, she gets given the baby, which causes one of the big monsters to teleport in. And the doctor's like, come get me. I'm the oldest one here. And for some reason, that means you want to eat me? Like,
Yeah, but 10 minutes ago, the doctor was like, oh, this church is old. It doesn't like old things.
Yeah, old will stop them getting in. Old's going to stop them. But now they want to eat old.
So they can't enter old things, but the doctor being old things can enter them. That's what I'm getting from this.
But they go after the doctor and the TARDIS, and then they both that vanishes, and it's just the TARDIS key left, and Rose is like, oh no.
Do you remember how you reacted to this scene as a kid? Because I thought the doctor was dead at this point.
I don't remember. It was too long ago.
But yeah, then, Doctor starts regenerating, David Tennant appears, and the episode gets weird from then on out, because David Tennant just starts running around.
And it's weird that he's not in any of the other episodes in season 1 as well. A weird, flash forward. But no, the Doctor vanishes with the TARDIS as the thing, eats them or whatever. Mm-hmm. And Pete's, staring out the window, and he notices the car appearing from out of thin air. There's, this little yellow bolt of lightning that it comes out of. Because, again, this guy that's driving the car is in an eternal nightmare where he just must kill. He has to kill Pete, and he can only do it by running him over. But this is where Pete starts to put 2 and 2 together, and he's figuring out that he has to die. He goes over to Rose, and he has a very good conversation with Rose as well.
Incredible acting from this actor when he's looking out the window. Just so much emotion is conveyed just through him just looking at the car. Great. I'm not entirely sure Simon Pegg would have managed to carry the same gravitas in his performance, but at the same time, the ending of Shaun of the Dead where his mum is dying, Simon Pegg is excellent in that movie, so maybe he would have had the same.
Simon Pegg is a very good actor. He so he does a lot of comedy movies, but he is a very good actor.
I forget how good of an actor Simon Pegg is. I want him to have more serious roles. He is really.
I've not seen him in anything in ages. I have not seen him in anything. Yeah. I think the last thing I saw him in was Star Trek Beyond.
Well, the next thing he's going to be in is the new Mission Impossible.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's coming out next month.
But I haven't seen the last 5 Mission Impossibles.
They're really good movies. There's not a single bad movie apart from maybe 2.
I think the last one I saw was 5. Yeah. I think that was the last one I've seen.
Mission
and so there's been
4
Fallout since then, 3 since then.
No, see, the last one you saw was 5.
The last one I saw was the one where they climbed the big building. And they've got the sticky gloves. They're in Dubai or something.
Yeah, I think
that was the last one I saw. It could be. It could have been 4.
So the last movie he did.
I know I haven't seen one in 10 years.
The last movie he did was Luck, which was a movie made by John Lasseter, because remember he got kicked out of Pixar for being a creep, and then he wound up being the head of another animation company because there's no god. People just fail upwards. The last proper movie he kind of did was Slaughterhouse Rules in 2018.
Oh, that sucked. Oh my god, I saw that movie. It sucked. Yeah, that has Nick Frost in it as well.
Yeah, it's one
all
of
about
those
fracking.
Yeah. They keep trying to make these movies and shows where Nick Frost and Simon Pegg reunite, and they never work. Maybe Paul works. Paul is decent.
Paul's the only one. Paul's the only other one that works. Paul is fantastic.
But we keep on forgetting the magic about the Cornetto trilogy was the fact that Edgar Wright was involved, because you need Edgar Wright to direct and be a writer in, because we never work, because we did that terrible TV show where we were Ghostbusters for a while.
Oh my god, yeah.
That Amazon show, what was it called?
It only got 1 season. I don't remember what it was called.
It was really shit.
Yeah, I remember being excited for that movie, that whatever it was called movie, that ended up being about fracking, which I don't know if anybody is still for fracking. I know what's her name that was prime minister for a week. She was really all for it, but that died with her entire political career. Liz Truss. But
a lot of A lot of Simon Pegg roles recently have just... Oh, he is also in The Boys, but he's not used that much, is he?
Oh, of course, yes, he is in The Boys. I think he's coming back in this new season though, which I'm excited for.
He was a regular in season 1, and then he made a cameo.
Wasn't in season 2.
Or was a cameo in season 3, or I don't remember. But...
Yeah, but yeah, no, he's not in a lot right now. Which I mean, fair enough. For
the
like
last
50 odd or
TV
something.
role he did was the TV show Agent Elvis. He played Paul McCartney.
Never heard of it.
It's basically what if Elvis was like a spy or something. I mean, also in the Sparks Brothers, he played John Lennon, so he's played 2 of the 4 Beatles.
Interesting. But yeah, no, I would like to see Simon Pegg in more stuff. I'd be happy for him to come back to Doctor Who as a different character as well.
Yeah, he is a good actor. I love Simon Pegg.
But yeah, this scene with Pete and Rose, and then Jackie comes in halfway through, is really heartbreaking. Where he's figured out that he has to die, so he's basically saying goodbye to everybody. And Jackie finally believes that Rose is her daughter, and they hug, and it's all sappy and
the opening,
lovey-dovey.
The opening to this scene, for just the shot, is amazing because it's Rose on the left side of the screen, just kind of frozen in shock, like the Doctor just died. Her dad is saved, but he's not the man she thought he was. So, and it's such a incredibly emotional experience for her, and she looks cold and lonely just at the side of the screen there. Such a good shot.
Yeah, it really is. It's really good, and the acting is 10 out of 10. Then of course, Pete goes out to get run over by the car.
Before he goes out and. He says he thinks the Doctor knew, but he had to sacrifice himself to make things right. In the original draft, it was more obvious the Doctor knew he would have to sacrifice Pete because one of the original drafts was he pushed a fake Pete in front of a bus.
Jesus Christ!
I like for this episode chose I like for this episode chose for the Doctor to not let on that Pete had to die because
it's like he's trying to find another way around it.
Yes, exactly. And it's a good character moment because if we knew as an audience that Pete had to die, we'd be sitting there thinking, this is a bit dark, isn't it?
Yeah. But he ends up going out in front of the car and getting run over and dying, but this time he doesn't die alone. Rose stays with him as he passes. And we then cut to Jackie basically being like telling the alternative story of her dad's death, where he didn't die by himself at a random accident. He instead committed suicide, but was lucky enough to have somebody at his side the entire time. Because she's like, nobody knows why he did it, but he just stepped out in front of a car one day, which is really dark. It's a really dark twist onto it, but I guess that is like what everybody saw happen. But and she goes on to say like she kept him comfortable and treated him well and stuff, and nobody knows who she was. She vanished. As we then see the Doctor and Rose walk back into the TARDIS, and the episode ends with with Rose saying like, my dad died on this date in 1987, which is the same way the episode opened, so it's like a nice little bookend sort of episode. It's a nice self-contained story,
Yeah, it's one of those episodes where if you hadn't seen Doctor Who and you're into like emotionally told stories, if you're into the Twilight Zone, which is also about, like the human condition meets sci-fi, then I would 100% recommend this episode to a new viewer. It's a very out of place Doctor Who episode. It's not unlike any other episode really, because it's a very personal story as well, which I like. I want more personal stories in Doctor Who because up to this point, the companion was just somebody to ask questions and just scream, and the companion was never a compelling character like this. We got close with Ace in in episodes like The Curse of Fenric, when she meets her mum as a baby who was emotionally abusive to her as a kid, and it kind of feels like almost like a spiritual sequel to that episode. What if a companion was a person? Imagine that.
Yeah, it's good. It's well written. I like it a lot. as much as it doesn't really fit with canon, and there's a lot of issues with it, structure, like just time travel rule wise.
Yeah.
You can overlook them for how well written the character stuff is. Like the character stuff, it takes the forefront for it. And like this is an episode I've always looked back fondly on. I've always been like, oh, this episode's fantastic. Just don't worry about the time travel rules, because like the establish of the monster that comes in like a parasite to eat any paradoxes, like they're never seen again, and they're established as being like this always happens, but they don't. But yeah, that's the only blight this episode has, I think, for me, is that time travel rules in this episode don't make sense. Other than that, this episode is like a 10 out of 10 episode. Like it's a really good episode.
It's one of the best. Series 1 in general is just really
Series
solid.
1's a banger. Yeah, no, it's it's a really good season.
And yeah, this is Russell T Davis's motive mission is to make everything emotional, to make you connect to the characters in ways you've never really connected to previous companions. And you know, as a kid, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I was gobsmacked by this episode. It was kind of life-changing to me as a kid, like just to feel represented in this episode, to kind of see grief as like a positive thing almost. It was life-changing for me. And it's an episode I'd never really revisit for obvious reasons, and I'm glad I was able to revisit it for this podcast, because it is a quality episode with amazing acting. Like Billie Piper is amazing in this episode.
Oh, she's really good. Yeah, she's really good in this episode, yeah.
Like, this is her first proper acting experience. You know, she was a pop star before this, and you would think she would train for acting for ages. She is so good in this episode.
She is indeed. Everybody's good. I don't think there's a weak performance in this episode, which is quite often the case with Doctor Who. There's not really ever in modern Who anyway. There's not really many episodes where I'm like, ooh, that was a bit rough, acting wise.
Yeah, I think you got Andy Pryor, because he is the casting director. He is still the casting director to this day.
Oh wow.
He is such an incredible casting. I'm not sure how involved he was in this episode in particular, but he obviously cast Christopher Ecclestone and Billie Piper, and both of them are amazing. So, you know, perfect.
Very good. But that does bring us to the end of this episode, which has been a surprisingly long episode. Wasn't expecting it to go on as long as it was. We have been recording since just after 2 in the afternoon, and it is now 5:15. So that's cool. But next week it is the end of the month, so we will be rounding up all the Doctor Who news that happened in the month. This month, it's not been much. It's been a kind of quiet month.
A
as
few
far as I
casting
can
announcements, some rumors going around. To be honest, I don't care about a lot of the rumors, because some of the rumors at the moment is like, oh, I wonder which episode is episode 1. Like,
oh yeah, great. But yeah, that's news is next month, so look forward to that. After that, we will be looking at Remembrance of the Daleks and going back to looking at Doctor Who chronologically this year. So be sure to follow us on social media so you can keep up to date when episodes release by subscribing to us on YouTube at youtube.com/WhoWatchesWho, where you can watch the podcast in video form. Hello to anybody watching this on YouTube. You can also listen to it in audio form if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts by subscribing to any of the podcast feeds that you've got. There's a heap of links in the description. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podcast Addict. There's an RSS feed, so you can just plug us into whatever one you want as well if we're not on your selected app of choice. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/WhoWatchesWho. We're also still on Twitter at twitter.com/WatchesDoctor. But that's a hellscape, and you shouldn't be on Twitter. Bad place. But until then, we will see you next week with the news. Bye-bye.
bye.